Please hold whilst we connect you.
You're listening to a Redacted special episode. As part of Melbourne Design Week in May 2025, in collaboration with RMIT and sponsored by Better Future and X-Frame, we hosted Futureproof, a 3-day event showcasing amazing local designs and nightly talks from leading industry experts. The talk you're listening to now is by Anne-Maree Sargeant, Director of the Authentic Design Alliance.
I have a question for you. What if the biggest threat to sustainability isn't just thinking about materiality and how something's made? What about if you haven't protected the design in the first place or protected the system that supports the design? Specifically, we're going to talk about the furniture industry, and I want you to think about why we need to protect it. Reconsider how furniture is designed and how it's consumed. And that's consumed on two levels. That's consumed by individuals, the mums and dads at home and all of us here. And also it's consumed on an industry level, which are all the office buildings that have surrounded us that are full of furniture that's procured at scale. So let's look at some statistics. Around 250,000 tonnes in Australia is collected up on the curb and taken to landfill. Now that is an estimate because no one's done a government study on it. That study was conducted 10 years ago, and this waste equates to almost 4 million 3-seat sofas or 35 million chairs. Now, that's just the stuff that's collected. That's not things left in illegal dumping. That's not stuff that people have self-disposed of. So we've got a junk problem. And within that, you've got to look at the waste of the toxicity and the materiality, all the stuff. It's just junk. In the office industry, now this is a government statistic, 95% of office furniture goes to landfill. Globally, that equates to 10 million tonnes, and this is built into the system. So there's my distorted perspective, and it's a bit rare to be doing a sustainability talk when you've created the images on AI. So we can probe that problem at another time. There's our statistics, which if you think about that, the equivalent of 4 million 3-seat sofas or 35 million chairs. That's globally in Australia. Office furniture, 95% of it, it's built into the system to go to landfill. Offices typically are tenanted for 7 years, and there's no system really for when the next tenant goes in or for when you re-tenant to collect that or to take it anywhere. And then we've got the hot potato, which is the replica furniture industry and replica and dupes. It's a problem driven by TikTok, by Instagram, that creates a culture of throwawayism, or what we call disposable decorating, meaning if it's broken, chuck it out and get another one. And people don't have what my grandparents had, where they kept things, they treasured things, they bought it, they had it for once. What we want to look at is how can we change these things? Waste isn't waste until you waste it. If we go for the great hip hop and R&B philosopher will.i.am. He actually didn't say it. Nobody's been credited to this, that there are plenty of memes you can find that he's been attributed. But think about it. It's not waste until you waste it. It's not waste if it's still in use, but it's waste the minute it hits the curb. If design is our superpower, has it actually become our downfall? I think that's something we all need to reflect upon. If we as designers start a project, whether you're starting to design a project as an individual with a piece or you're designing a project as a team of 8. As the director of the Authentic Design Alliance, we're an industry association, member funded. Our two main remits are to advocate and educate. And when I say advocate, around 10 years ago when we first came into play with IP Australia, they were like, who the hell are these people? And we're like, hi, we're the furniture industry. We've got a really big problem. You don't protect us. And we weren't heard. And here we are 10 years later, hand in hand working with IP Australia in a really measured, cohesive, collaborative way. Within our advocacy, we're able to educate, and that happens 2 ways. We educate consumers working with a lot of design shows and soon with our podcast Design Made. And we work with industry. I graduated as an interior designer. I work within the design sector. I work within furniture design, so we're also aligned with industrial design. All those logos are probably a little bit small, but they're the sort of brands that we are partnered with who fund what we do. And these are committed brands who, to quote Volker Haag, who just won their Melbourne Design Week prize, congratulations, Volker said, AMS, our membership is cheaper than a cease and desist letter for someone that copies us. So they're more interested in being part of the solution than constantly feeding the lawyers to work with the problem. Our vision is that counterfeit and replica designs are criminalised, and they're criminalised in the EU. Within that, we also advocate for, and really agitate, and more than advocate, for cultural change. And that's cultural change on a consumer level, which is the attitude of choose well and buy once, going back to my grandparents, which we can't say are your great-grandparents, but that a generational shift of keeping rather than throwing. And if we look at why families buy organic food for their family and they consider now the waste of fashion and trying to be ethical with those decisions, why are we not making the same decisions about the things we surround ourselves in our homes? Why are we surrounding ourselves with things that are filled with toxicity, that are draining the planet of resources? And soon we're going to end up, and this is real, with a health crisis. An Australian scientific group have found forever plastics in the human brain. So disposing of cheap plastic chairs will end up in food sources. It will end up as a health issue. So what do we do about that as designers? Let's look at some solutions and try and understand why IP matters. First example here, we're going to talk about a project where the IP wasn't protected. David Trubridge, he, in the early 2000s, was working at TAFE in Western Australia. He was in the workshop. He was experimenting. Prior to that, he'd worked in deep sea marine, and he was inspired by the shape of coral, and he created this repeated geometry where 60 pieces end up being connected together, and you end up with a line that is sold in a box that's this size. In the early 2000s, the replica furniture industry was yet to explode. And what David did was he designed a system that went out to consumers like this. He then went from Western Australia and went to Milan to the furniture fair. He decided that there was a commercial future for this, but in 2003, 2004, hadn't considered protecting the intellectual property. And the last thing on his mind in New Zealand was the fact that this was going to be copied. By the way, these products are now sold in over 50 countries in the world. So these copies, obviously you've got the genuine article and then you've got the knockoff. When the consumer tried to assemble that, the thing would break. So what did the knockoff dealers do? They'd send them in a box that was almost 1 cubic metre full of polystyrene and ship it around the world. I've just got a short video.
I'm David Trubridge, and I'm the owner and CEO of David Trubridge Limited. If you can kind of create something as an artist that's not expected, that people don't even know they want, you've got your own new market yourself. And if you're lucky, something will come out of it that will take you in a whole new direction, which is what happened to me with the lighting. This is coral. This was the first light I did. And this was the one which was just made for fun. The first time we noticed anything coming up, any copies coming up, was one in Europe. It was made by a Belgian designer who was living in Spain. And we quite quickly stopped that and we thought, oh, well, that's good. But then they started coming more and more. And then the real insult came in 2014 when as a Chinese company exhibited at the Hong Kong Lighting Fair, a booth which was full of my lights. And this was like a kick in the guts. This was like someone had invaded my home. They'd come in and ransacked my home and taken things that belonged to me.
The fakes that I have seen turned up in a cardboard box filled with crushed polystyrene, loosely chucked in. The parts were all individually rolling around inside. We put one of those lights together, managed to break a lot of pieces, and it looked absolutely awful. The product that I saw wasn't selling for a huge difference in price between the genuine and the fake, which is really ripping the customer off as well.
Before we engage with 3 points, Josh would often ask everyone up in the design studio to have a look online, see if they could find anything. So often would spend half an hour a day just having a bit of a look around, sort of being internet sleuths. We weren't the best at doing that, but occasionally would find the odd website. It used to take up a lot of our time, and we can just focus on design and doing our core jobs and not really worry about that anymore.
It's quite straightforward. I'll come in the morning, I'll check if there's any new infringements and any that have been solved. I'll take some screenshots of those, send them to our distributors. I'm all done within 10 minutes. So far it's over 600 that we've identified. I go in there and I confirm whether it's a counterfeit or not by each listing individually. And then they issue takedowns and start the process. And we've seen them drop off very rapidly and the incidences of them recurring being lower than previously as well. In Australia alone, over the last couple of years, we've spent roughly $150,000 fighting the problem with lawyers. So comparatively, the Red Points system, and we find that a lot more cost effective, not only in the actual outlay, but in the time saved as well.
So to bring you up to speed, David didn't have the IP protected, and even if it was design registered in Australia, a design registration lasts for 10 years. So being designed in 2003, 2004, by 2014, by that instance, when they went to a Hong Kong lighting show and saw an entire stand of Chinese copies of their own lights when they're there to exhibit their own lights, they employed a group called Red Points. Now, there are plenty other AI-based organisations that scour tags, trademarks, photographs, and they have over 90% strike rate to be able to bring those counterfeits down. Now, they mentioned 600 there. It's in the thousands now. In Australia, if you design a product and it's made in less than 50 units, it can be considered a work of artistic craftsmanship. It's not considered industrially produced. And David's lawyers managed to win this landmark case, and 7 shipping containers were destroyed, and each box in those shipping containers was 3/4 of a cubic metre full of polystyrene, fully assembled. And during Vivid Festival in 2016, we had a destruction party and everyone stomped them, which is not great because it still ends up in landfill, but it did feel good. Now let's look at an example where there's circularity and IP protection and have a look at it. This is by our good friend Andrew Simpson with Edward Co. Husky Cup is a really intelligent solution to single-use coffee cups. By upcycling coffee husk, it's diverting cafe waste from agricultural landfill. It's like this, it's BPA free, it's food safe, it's dishwasher proof, and it's commercially viable. So this launched in about 2017, and it was designed with a practical, scalable, closed loop system on a consumer level. So here's my 8-year-old cup, and anyone who's got a dog, you can drop it quite a lot of time, or it goes to the footy with me, it gets dropped. It's still entirely intact. And according to the measurer on the website, I've saved over 9 kilograms of single-use coffee cups from going to waste just by this particular one. Within the closed loop system, within the design of it, the channels are protecting my hands from it being hot and also keeping the beverage warm. They're stackable and they're also designed for cafes. So within the cafe system, they're new for used. So this is actually, maybe I can go and get an upgrade. I should find a participating cafe. And then at the end of life, they've got a closed loop system, and it's not a curbside system. It's a structured take back program. They're only made in 2 colours, and the reason for that is it makes it easy for sorting, and for when they recycle it, it keeps it simple. And then there's the B Corp certification. And here we have chain stores doing chain store things. There's a design registration, and you can search all of these design registrations readily on IP Australia. So it names Edward Co., Andrew Simpson. It says when the design is registered to, it gives all the details of that design. And between the registered design and the trademark and the circularity, they've created a system that globally they're able, whilst the protections last, to readily stop copies. Now let's look at how products stay in circulation. Now, to look at data science, the information out is only as good as the information in. And that is the same thing within design and within furniture design. You can only recycle or restore products that are designed to be recycled or restored. All of that thinking starts at the beginning. 2 of our Authentic Design Alliance founders, we're going to look at 2 examples. One, Cultivated, which is an initiative by Cult Design. And then we're going to look at Relive quickly by Living Edge.
So I think the challenge is looking at sustainability with fresh eyes, not just about certified product. It's about what can the sustainability story be.
In terms of furniture waste in Australia, very little has happened in this space.
Around 50,000 tonnes of used furniture is discarded on pavements every year.
Once again, longevity in a product is a fundamental part. I think deciding whether or not a product's going to go forward.
The way I was actually brought up in this factory, it was always tradition, doing everything by hand. Everything's got to be quality work. Everything is done once.
So what Cultivated is doing in this space is brilliant. It's giving consumers an opportunity to purchase beautiful reused products.
So it's about looking at sustainability from a different perspective with a different lens.
You can only take out what you've put in. It starts with the quality in the first instance. First of all, this is an interesting project. This is an exhibition we did with Sydney Design Week in 2021. And Cultivated worked with the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney. They reclaimed a huge quantity of Fritz Hampton Series 7 chairs. This is the before and the after, and they totally restored them back to new. And they're working with a university in another state where they're repurposing numbers of plastic chairs and then they're refabricating them as tabletops. So diverting things from landfill and then for the products that can't be restored but are still usable. They work with a First Nations owned group that distributes that through First Nations communities. So these products are still kept in use. And if they can't be used by the organisation, there are people that still need furniture. And so these are redistributed. The second example at scale, looking at circularity at scale, and if we go back to the 11 floors, and in this case, it's Australia Post, their new headquarters in Burnley. It's the first time it's a walkthrough. But what Living Edge are doing with Relive is they're working with thousands of pieces of furniture per project. And in the Australia Post instance, it's 4,500 or 5,000 pieces of furniture that are not only diverted from landfill, but they're refurbished and put back into use. If we look at the Venn diagram here, you've got there's products and brands that Living Edge distribute. So we can take Herman Miller are a great example who have a cradle to grave design strategy. Then you look at the customer, which is both on a consumer and on a commercial level. And then the end-of-life pathways, whether it can be kept in the cycle, whether it can be diverted somewhere else, or whether it can be broken down and all the different parts can be used for somewhere else. And in between all of that is where you get the true part of circularity. What this brings is an understanding of rethinking value over cost. It's not a matter of what something costs. It's about how much it means and what value it gives to the user and the value ongoing. And then if we look at the life cycle, this is a new thinking where we're looking at furniture as a product. It's products as a service, which is PaaS, so capital P, lower AAS. And this is where the supplier owns the product. It's rethinking ownership, where the business or the individuals, the company gets to use it. The supplier maintains it all the way through. And at the end of the lease, the supplier takes it back and then either refurbishes it, redistributes it. And this is looking at how at scale we can start to address that 95% of office furniture that goes to waste. For any designer or brands here, you need to consider that your impact begins at the first decision because 80%, and this is a proven fact, 80% of environmental impact is locked in right at the design phase. So you have a really big responsibility at the beginning of the journey. So apart from thinking through your circle of decision making of how things come from gestation to delivery, there's 5 key ingredients looking at, is your product actually original? How is it made? And what type of materials are you using? Have you considered, as Adam Goodrum said before, longevity? Without longevity, there's no point. Then circularity, that includes, is it able to have a second or a third life? And then at the end, recycling is the last resort. How can that be broken down? So it's a simple 5-step process. Once you come through that, you have to then consider what's your IP strategy. And Andrew Simpson, anyone who's worked or had anything to do with Vert Design, he's a big proponent for having your IP strategy locked in right at the beginning. Is your idea actually new? Do your due diligence. Search, and search again. And as Nick Carlo says, it's designed by them. And when you find a render, then put that into reverse. And when you find it, just drill back. Are you actually doing something new? Are you supplying a solution to something? Because we're way beyond having a situation where we design pretty things just so that we can look at. And I'm not here to put the art design market down, which is a collector's market, which is different. If you're working at scale, you need to be solving a problem. Is the IP budgeted? Is it put in the project line? You can go to IP Australia. There's some really handy tools there, and it's very simple to look through. If the trademark exists, if the business mark exists, you can look through patents, and you can actually segue into other territories for design registrations. And then are your customer base or your clients on board with you? Because what's the point if you're the only one pushing for this? So you need to educate the broader circle. This is a super crash course in IP protection. A design registration protects how it looks. A patent protects how it works. A trademark protects what the product's called, what your brand's called, potentially even your name. So A. Tom Dixon stool, whatever XYZ stool. It could be each of those parts may be trademarked. And copyright doesn't protect products. Copyright protects your Instagram images. It doesn't protect product. So as a final thought, we must rethink what we make and how we make it. And we must design products and systems that regenerate and not deplete. And if you want to know more about it, you can reach us through Linktree in our bio. You can find me, or if you've got any specific questions, you can contact the Redacted team and they can aggregate all of your questions.
Thanks for listening to this Redacted special episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to check the show notes for links to learn more about Anne-Maree Sargeant and the Authentic Design Alliance, where to follow Redacted, plus listen to more of our episodes. Thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been a Redacted special episode.